to NASCAR on Fox. Tonight, we begin the 2009 season in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series with a non-point-paying race, but an exciting one nonetheless. We begin 2009 Speed Weeks with the Budweiser Shootout from this 2.5-mile oval. That is going to be a great race, and it's also going to be an opportunity for the drivers who are the most talented and the most illustrious to show off their flair tonight under the lights from Daytona. You know how it is in Speed Weeks. There's the Budweiser Shootout, followed by the Gatorade Duels, which determines not only who gets into Daytona 500, also known as the Great American Race, but it also determines who qualifies where, since traditional qualifying is not used for the Daytona 500, or it was used until this year when it was changed by NASCAR. And then on Friday night, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series will be running under the lights. This will be the first of two races under the lights for Speed Weeks. The Budweiser Shootout is under the lights, as you can clearly see, but also the Truck Series race will be at night as well. On Saturday afternoon during the day, we will see the NASCAR Nationwide Series face off at the same track. And then on Sunday afternoon, we will see the Sprint Cup Series, the main event, showing off their 200-lap special known as the Great American Race. Here, only 20 cars are featured, and there's a good reason why. The Bud Shootout is not your traditional race. There's not a full field, and even there's about only half of a field. But it's because the most talented drivers and the drivers who have the most accolades are the ones who will be racing tonight. Starting in the 6th position is Bobby Labonte, who won the Winston Cup Championship in 1999. Also Kevin Harvick, a very illustrious driver with a lot of awards. He is starting on the pole after qualifying with a 48.099 as his qualifying time. Tony Stewart in the 14 for his new team, Stewart-Haas Racing. He will be starting third on the inside of row number 2. And also Mark Martin, who has not won a championship yet, but he has come extremely close in so many different seasons. I can count them off right here: 1990, 1998, 2002. You could list off so many different seasons that he could have won a championship, but just fell up short. That's why he's racing in the Bud Shootout, because even though he hasn't won a championship yet, he still has had a very, very important career in NASCAR history. Also, starting in 9th as the two-time winner of the Daytona 500 in 2001, when the tragic death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. happened, and also in 2003, it is Michael Waltrip. He's no longer racing for DEI. He is now racing for his own team that he started up in 2007 during the transitional period between Gen 4 and the Car of Tomorrow, Michael Waltrip Racing. Michael Waltrip Racing was penalized in 2007 for the Speed Weeks period after they found that Michael Waltrip's car, in inspection, had some sort of substance caked on the bottom of the car, and people thought at first that it was jet fuel. Turns out it was rocket fuel. So all of the drivers were penalized, and unfortunately for many of the drivers that had worked for Michael Waltrip in 2007, they either left the program or their sponsors left, forcing them to depart as well. Dale Jarrett was driving the number 44 for Michael Waltrip Racing in 2007 with UPS as a sponsor. However, following the controversy during the 2007 Speed Weeks, he ended up leaving the program. David Rudiman is really the only driver from the original 2007 lineup that has stuck around, and he is not in the Bud Shootout, but he will be in the first of the 2 Daytona duels featured this weekend. So we'll see how that works out, but there's also Dale Earnhardt Jr. starting his 2nd season for Hendrick Motorsports in the number 88 Mountain Dew Chevrolet. He was racing for DEI, his dad's old company, for so many years, and now he's got an opportunity with Hendrick to maybe win a championship or 2. Of course, there's also Kyle Busch, there's Bill Elliott, the multi-time champion, Derek Cope starting near the rear of the field, and your reigning champion of 2008, Jimmy Johnson, starting near the rear as well. And there's your 2003 champion, Matt Kenseth, as well. With that being said, let's take a look from Jeff Gordon's view as we listen to the driver command for the 2009 Budweiser Shootout.
Gentlemen, start your engines!
Been I intercept for the first segment. We shouldn't really be in danger of overheating, but it will, probably get up to about 220, so just keep an eye on that.
That was Jeff Gordon's spotter, Alan Gustafsson, calling the shots as we are just about to get started with the 2009 season and the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series from the Budweiser Shootout. You can see there's your specially decorated pace car with the checkers on the side of the car. With that being said, we have a 20-car field. Let's take a look at the starting lineup. In row number 1, we have Elliott Sadler on the outside, and on your inside pole, you have Kevin Harvick. Then in row number 2, you have Jeff Gordon on the outside and Tony Stewart on the inside. Row 3 has Mark Martin and your 1999 Winston Cup champion, Bobby Labonte. In row 4, we have Denny Hamlin on the outside and two-time Daytona 500 winner, Michael Waltrip. In row number 5, we have Ryan Newman, who has just been picked up this year by Stewart-Haas Racing to race for his new team in the number 39 U.S. Army Chevrolet, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. to his outside. In row number 6, we have Greg Biffle on the inside and former champion Terry Labonte driving for Prism Motorsports on the outside. In row number 7, we have Kyle Busch driving for Joe Gibbs Racing on the inside and Bill Elliott on the outside. In row number 8, we have Jamie McMurray and Matt Kenseth, two Roush Fenway Racing teammates. They are racing side by side. Joe Nemechek for Nemco Motorsports is on the outside of row 9, and reigning champion Jimmy Johnson on the inside. Starting near the rear of the field today, didn't have a great qualifying run. And then in the last row, Mike Skinner, the former Truck Series champion, and Derek Cope, starting on the inside of row number 10 in the 19th position. But Kevin Harvick won the Daytona 500 in 2007. In a close battle with Mark Martin and with one of the greatest photo finishes in the race's history. But we kick off the 2009 season with a bang, and it's a green flag from the Budweiser Shootout at Daytona. And already a lot of moves being made. Tony Stewart jumped to the inside, and they're 3 wide for the lead going into turn number 1. And there's Mark Martin giving Stewart a little bit of help. And Elliott Sadler already starting to fall back a little bit, and it seems like the inside line is already starting to reign supreme a little bit. Here's Mark Martin coming through on the inside with Michael Waltrip in the 55, trying to help him and get him to a better position. And Kevin Harvick, who is your pole sitter, already outside of the top 3. He's running in the 4th position and trying to hold on to his top 5 spot. Coming off of 4 into the tri-oval, Mark Martin will lead lap number 1 of the 2009 Budweiser Shootout. Here comes Michael Waltrip on the inside. Ryan Newman looks like he's going to give him a little bit of help. Actually, he might end up being, he might actually be a detriment to Waltrip, because he looked like that he was going to work with Waltrip through the draft, but the contrary ended up being the case, where Ryan Newman started to push Waltrip up the track, then he got forced to the middle lane, and there's Waltrip going to the high side as Ryan Newman looks like he might take the lead away if Greg Biffle looks to help with him. Coming off of turn number 4, see some of the field is starting to dissipate in the rear. It's a very close battle. But wow, that was very close. But Terry Labonte, that was Michael's driver in 2007 for the 55 car. Let's take a look at that margin. 2 1/1000ths of a second as Ryan Newman barely got beat out by Michael Waltrip. It's a good thing that that wasn't the end of the race right there, and we still have 48 laps to go from the Budweiser Shootout. But Ryan Newman does lead. Now coming off of 4 again, he's got a pretty good cushion. But let's see if anybody else challenges at this point early in the race. I think it's important to note out the fact that, when you have a comfortable cushion like this on plate races, it's hard to have that for a prolonged amount of time. And you also have to consider the fact that he's all by himself. He's got about a quarter-second lead over everyone else in the entire pack, and everyone else behind him is running 3 wide, either 3 wide or 2 wide. So they're all bunched in together, and Newman is the only exception from that pack racing. So when everybody's drafting and he has no draft help, he's eventually going to lose that cushion. As you can even see right now, Greg Biffle's getting a little bit closer, but at the same time, he's losing his draft help that he had for so long. So now coming off the 4 again, Bobby Labonte scraping the wall. You could hear it, and we got a crash. Big one in the tri-oval. Terry Labonte's involved. Jamie McMurray, Elliott Sadler. There's Tony Stewart, who started, oh man, Michael Waltrip taking a very hard lick. Bill Elliott as well. As we said, there's Terry Labonte. Joe Nemechek got held up. And the caution is out on lap number 5 out of 50. Ryan Newman is your leader. You know, I heard Bobby Labonte in the 96 scrape the wall a little bit, but I didn't think that it was going to come much of it. I didn't think that much was going to happen, since I thought, you know, it's Robbins racing. Maybe he's just getting a little bit loose or a little bit tight off the corner, and it's just a little scrape. But let's take a look at what happened, since this is obviously a big way to start the season with a big one in the tri-oval, the Budweiser Shootout. So what happens here is that it looks like Michael Waltrip might have pushed the 96 of Labonte into the wall, and then after he hits the wall, he might have jerked the wheel a little bit too much, and it looks like he panicked a little bit because Waltrip hooks him. Then it's a chain reaction. He hooks into Labonte, then Sadler hooks into Gordon. There's Terry Labonte right there. He hits the outside wall hard. There's Elliott Sadler. And then Labonte comes back across the track, and they're spinning right there. Luckily, Mark Martin missed it. And then Tony Stewart just got hit a little bit as well. But while that's happening, we saw Michael Waltrip got hit an absolute ton. I think this is where Bill Elliott comes in. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness, a hard hit right there. I mean, he was wobbling the car all over, and I was wondering why Michael Waltrip had such a huge impact. But that explains it right there. Michael Waltrip got absolutely blindsided by Bill Elliott. With that being said, let's take a look from the 96's view of Bobby Labonte, who was running inside the top 5 at the time of the wreck. There's Bill Elliott sliding right in front of Labonte because he's like, what in the world's going on? Also as well, let's take a look from the number 26 of Jamie McMurray, and then after that, we're going to take a look at the number 21 of Bill Elliott, and then the 55 of Michael Waltrip, since they had some of the hardest impacts this entire race. Or in this entire incident, I should say. He got hit back-to-back there by Joe Nemechek and by Terry Labonte, and that's why Labonte had so much damage. But then again, let's take a look from 21 of Bill Elliott, since that was a very vicious lick that had happened there. And Bill was running from the 18th position. He was just working with Nemechek. They were way off the pace. But let's take a look regardless and see what in the world was going on. You see they're wrecking in front of them there. Oh. Okay, so, you know, with all the smoke in front of you, I guess that what happened there was that he just got caught up in it. I mean, Waltrip probably couldn't see well, or I should say Elliott couldn't see well because there's so much smoke in front of you. I guess the only fault that I would have to lie on would be the spotter, because he was the guy that was supposed to be saying, hey, you know, 21's coming, or I should say, you know, slow down. But that's all principle. Well, let's take a look at the 55 of Michael Waltrip. See what he sees. He's got absolutely blindsided on the driver's side door as he came to rest in the tri-oval. He didn't even see it coming. I can bet that right now. I bet he did not see it coming whatsoever. But from that crash, a total of 5 cars will be going to the garage. The 26 of Jamie McMurray, the 87 of Joe Nemechek, the 66 of Terry Labonte, the 21 of Bill Elliott, quite obviously, and the 55 of Michael Waltrip. So 5 cars are now out of the race, and 15 remain on lap number 7 of 50 in the Budweiser Shootout. Your current top 10, or since we have 15 cars, we might as well just go through the entire field, so why not? Your current leader is Ryan Newman, followed by Greg Biffle in second, Matt Kenseth in third, Kyle Busch in fourth, Dale Earnhardt Jr. in fifth, Kevin Harvick in sixth, Mark Martin in seventh, Mike Skinner in eighth, Derek Cope in ninth, Jeff Gordon rounds out the top 10, and then the final 5 cars would be Denny Hamlin, Tony Stewart, who was caught up in the wreck, Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Labonte, who started the wreck, and Elliott Sadler in 15th, who was also pretty consequently involved. But from what we saw from the 55 of Michael Waltrip, when we looked at his onboard camera, I did not see any reason to think that he shoved Bobby Labonte into the wall that started the entire accident. The only thing that Waltrip did was basically hook Labonte after he had hit the wall and after he got loose coming off of the corner. That is the only thing I saw. I originally pointed out that maybe Waltrip shoved Labonte into the wall, and then, coming off of 4, he gets loose, and then he takes out the field. But that is not what I saw from the onboard camera, because you would have felt it if you saw him push Labonte into the wall. That's not what we saw. I think what ended up happening was that maybe there was a little bit of a side draft or whatnot that sent Labonte into the wall, got him a little bit loose, and then when he's slowing down, because you're not getting any faster by hitting the wall, by no means, you are not getting any better by hitting the wall. I think what we just saw there was a classic case of, okay, he gets loose, he's slowing up, here comes the driver behind him, and he ends up turning him, and it eventually causes a chain reaction that caused the wreck that we just saw. But the pace car lights are off, which means that we are going green this time by Ryan Newman, looking for his first win in 2009, and he wants to start off the season with a win. That would be the perfect case scenario, especially since he won the Daytona 500 in 2008. And it was his last Daytona 500 in a number 12 car of Penske Racing, sponsored by Alltel, mostly Alltel and Sony, but he's with a new team. He has a new car owner, he has a new team owner. He has a new future ahead of him for Ryan Newman. He started off in 2002, and this is his 8th year in the NASCAR Cup circuit. And he leads, still early in the Budweiser Shootout, coming to the restart zone, green flag for Newman. Looks like Kyle Busch already making a move to the inside, trying to make some positions there. He started 4th. He restarted 4th. I don't know how long that will last. Now there's Kevin Harvick and Mark Martin on the inside trying to work together. As now it's Greg Biffle running second fiddle to Ryan Newman. They're running the same line, and most of the top 5, if not all of the top 5, they're all running single file in that middle lane. Newman, Biffle, Kenseth, Busch, and Dale Jr. Or that would be Kevin Harvick, since Jr. is starting to fall off a little bit. Now they're all breaking up. Here comes Biffle to the outside, but I think that might hurt him a little bit as Kyle Busch has a better run. But now the Roush teammates are starting to work together. There's Matt Kenseth and Greg Biffle looking like they might make an alliance. Because their other Roush friends, are essentially out of contention. Jamie McMurray is out of the race, and that's the only other Roush car to be in this race. And then the other 2, Greg Biffle and Matt Kenseth, they're running inside the top 5. They are playing pretty good right now. And they have a good strategy to keep themselves in contention for the remainder of the race. as they're 3 wide. And as we had said before, it was looking like that when Ryan Newman had the lead earlier, he had a good cushion, but it wouldn't last. And it probably wouldn't have lasted if the caution didn't come out and sort of reset everything and, you know, put everything on hold when the accident happened and the multi-car crash in the tri-oval on lap number 4. As you can see, there's Greg Biffle losing positions. He started this lap 3rd. Now he's outside of the top 5. He's running in the 6th position, and if Kenseth passes him, it'll be even worse for him. As Kyle Busch coming in up to Ryan Newman, looking to maybe make a pass. Let's take a look here. Here comes Kevin Harvick jumping to the inside. Now Newman's getting surrounded. One to his inside, one to his outside. Harvick and Busch right behind him as we go to lap number 12 out of 50. Right now, I'd say there's only about 10 cars that are actually competitive. Derek Cope, Elliott Sadler, Mike Skinner, Bobby Labonte, and Tony Stewart. Labonte and Stewart were both involved in the accident, but regardless, they are way off the pace. Cope and Sadler was involved, but Cope wasn't. Cope and Skinner are essentially just slower cars. They're really only running because of the accomplishments that they've had earlier in their careers, and, you know, and with top tier teams and not, you know, back markers that don't exactly have the funding to be competitive at the cup level. I mean, that's just the hard truth here. That is the exact hard truth that I'm trying to get across here, because when you're in the NASCAR cup level, you have to have a lot of money, you have to have a lot of talent, and you have to have a mix of everything. And the perfect equation and the perfect combination of circumstances has to go right for you to be a competitive driver or a competitive team in Cup. And that's why it was originally controversial at first for Tony Stewart to become an owner-driver and start Stewart-Haas Racing. Because it wasn't like he was sort of making an alliance with a, you know, with a front-runner team. Haas CNC Racing had not been the most successful. The last driver that they had that was really successful was like Mike Bliss in 2004, and even then, he didn't do too good. Ward Burton, I believe. No, it was Mike Bliss who drove for them in 2005 and 2006. And then Ward Burton, in his last competitive Cup season, he ran the number 0 car, sponsored by Net Zero, in 2004. And of course, he came back in 2007 to run the number 4 car for Morgan McClure Motorsports, sponsored by State Water Heaters. But then you also have to consider the fact that in 2003 they ran with Jack Sprague, one of the most accomplished NASCAR Truck Series drivers of all time. But that's because it's almost like when in college football, a head coach comes over to the NFL and tries to make it big there. Usually the college head coaches are the best in college, and then they're sort of mediocre in the NFL. And it's the other way. Then it's the other way around as well. NFL head coaches are really good, but it's really hard to manage and operate a college team in the current atmosphere of college sports in the NCAA. But enough about college football, as Ryan Newman, who led this lap, has lost the lead to Kevin Harvick in the number 29. And Dale Jr. in the number 88 looks to make a move with the help of the 2 Roush cars and 2 more Hendrick cars. One thing that I wanted to know that I found really interesting is that for this Bud Shootout, this is the first time in a long time this has happened, but all 4 Hendrick cars are competing at the Bud Shootout this year. If we take a look on our screen, there's Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's in 3rd. He's one of them. Then another one would be Mark Martin in the 5 car. He's running in 8th. Jeff Gordon's running in 9th, Jeff Gordon's running in 10th, and Jimmy Johnson's running in 11th. So those are 4 cars from the same team being competitive, and all running in the top 10 and giving a fight for the lead. I'd say, if anything, Dale Jr. has the best chance of winning this year's Bud Shootout out of any of the other Hendrick cars. However, that could always change depending on how long he stays in the position that he's at, because he's in 2nd right now, and he's battling really hard for that position as Greg Biffle and Kevin Harvick are taking it away from him. And Mark Martin in the 5 car, he might be creeping up to the side of the number 88. Let's take a look from Martin's hood. I will happily admit, he's making a lot of progress. And he is starting to get a little bit closer to Dale Jr., but at the same time, so are Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. Jr. is currently running in 5th, Gordon is running in 8th, and then Martin and Johnson are running 9th and 10th. And right behind him, well, I wouldn't say right behind him, there's the pack of like 5 cars that are all way off the pace. If you want to call these guys the leaders, then Derek Cope has a great cushion. But right now, they are all running in the 11th through 15th positions, and really, they're just going for money, and they're going for incentives at this point, and the paycheck at the end of speed weeks. Newman and Harvick now working together, single file, as now most of the racing has devolved into single file train racing, if you want to call it that. A lot of the Gen 4 races before the car of tomorrow was introduced, a lot of those Gen 4 races, especially at plate tracks, like Daytona and Talladega, which are the only 2 restrictor plate super speedways on the circuit, including for this year, I think it's important to note that when it came to those races in particular, there was a lot of train racing. There wasn't a lot of pack racing where everybody was stacked up 3x3. It was a lot of the single file that we just saw on the previous lap, of everybody sort of being single file and working together. Now that can work, and it can also backfire, because for the fans, it can make the race really boring, but at the same time, it can also make the race really practical for the drivers, because yeah, putting on a spectacle that's full of racing that's, you know, insanely high velocity and high intensity, and then you also throw in a few crashes in there, and, you know, you have somebody flip on his lid, you have to consider a show for the fans is a lot different than a show for the drivers, because they don't want to be caught up in a wreck. Because that's the entire goal of racing, to finish the race and do as best as you can. And maybe if you get lucky, or you're just plain flat out dominant, you might go to victory lane at the end of the day. The goal is not to wreck, and I know that seems obvious to the, I should say, more experienced race fan, but for somebody, you know, who might be tuning in to the sport for the first time, they might not know that. They just might think it's a demolition derby in the middle of eastern Florida. But that's not what we have here. We have a race where everybody's basically trying to stay the entire, in this case, 50 laps. When we get to Daytona, it's going to be 150 laps. When we get to Bristol, it's going to be 375 laps. So no matter how many laps or how many miles it may be at the end of the day, you still have to consider the fact that that's what we're going for. That's what they're going for. They're going to finish the race, and they want to go in victory lane at the end of the day. They don't want to be going on a wrecker to the medical care center, and they don't want to be going home at the end of the day. That's the problem. Now, Denny Hamlin has slid up into the 2nd position. Ryan Newman still leads on lap number 22, as Dale Earnhardt Jr. still making a run for the 3rd position. Let's take a look from the hood of the number 17 of Matt Kenseth, who is currently being pushed from the 5th position by Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, Kyle Busch. He just lost that, but let's still take a look. So there's Matt Kenseth currently running in the 6th position, as Kyle Busch did overtake him. But it looks like that the tables have been turned. Matt Kenseth is going to turn past Kyle Busch, and he's also going to pass Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now there's Greg Biffle running in the third position. He's going to try to pass Denny Hamlin. Here they come off of turn number 4. The pack is getting more and more dissipated as the laps progress. And Ryan Newman still is leading without much draft help on lap number 24. 27 laps remain in this race as we speak. As they're 3 wide, they were 3 wide battling for the second position, but Denny Hamlin has now fallen back. Although that battle might be resurging again as look at Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, and Greg Biffle. And they're even 3 wide down the backstretch. That's Busch, Kenseth, and Biffle. There would have been 22 drivers in this race, but 2 elected not to drive. The one would be Dave Blaney, who was originally going to drive the 67. Now, the reason why he was going to drive the 67 was because Terry Labonte was devoted to driving the number 66. So what would happen is that Prism Motorsports would just simply field a second car and call it a day. However, that ended up not happening because Dave Blaney is going to be running a one-off race in the Truck Series event on Friday night. So he decided, instead of having to switch from a Cup car to a truck and get used to the setups and everything that have to do with that, he elected not to race. The second exception would be Kurt Busch, who was under the weather. Today he has cold-like symptoms, so he will not be participating in this event. You know, you might say, oh, Davey Allison was sick and he still finished the race, but hey, it's not 1992 anymore. It's 2009 and we're in a more modernized era of stock car racing. Ryan Newman will come back to the Tri-Oval and will lead lap number 25. We have officially surpassed the halfway mark of the Budweiser Shootout. Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. trying to make a run on Kevin Harvick. Your top 5 as we speak is Ryan Newman, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, Mark Martin, and Kyle Busch. And we haven't talked much about Denny Hamlin today, but let's dig into a little bit of appreciation for the man. Currently running 7th. He is one of 2 Joe Gibbs Racing cars that is still in the race today, and one of 2 that actually participated, because the others, including the, who should we mention? The 20 of Joey Logano, who is a rookie. He decided not to participate, I should say, it's not that he didn't decide not to participate, he just simply wasn't invited. I think that's a more straightforward way to put it, but that's how it all went down for Joe Gibbs Racing this event. But Denny Hamlin hasn't had too incredible of a career so far. He's only had a few wins under his belt, and he's still looking to get his first career championship. But so are everybody else in Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch doesn't have a championship, but he's only been racing with the organization for 2 years. Because he was driving the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports. But then that opportunity fell through, and it was eventually relegated to Joe Gibbs Racing. When Dale Earnhardt Jr. showed up, they retired the number 5 in 2008, but then they signed, well, wouldn't you know, Mark Martin to the position. And now he's driving the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports. Speaking of Mark Martin, let's take a look from his cockpit cam. The number 5, Park West Chevrolet. Martin hit the wall, but seems like no repercussions ended up escalating from that. I mean, he's just sort of scraped the right rear quarter panel. I don't think it was anything to worry about, but now he's really falling back. It was about 32 laps to go. He's at the rear now. He's in 10th, and everybody else behind him. There's Derek Cope and Bobby Labonte. I mean, they're about half a lap away from each other. You can see Jimmy Johnson is 1.06 behind the leader, and then everybody else is 26 and 27 seconds behind. It's quite obvious that pretty much everybody is running the same speed in that pack because it's a 5-car hodgepodge and a squad of drivers who have damage on their car or just don't have the engine power to get going in a timely manner. That's exactly what we're sort of focusing in on, as with 21 laps to go on lap number 30, Dale Earnhardt Jr. still looks to get his first career Daytona win with Hendrick, or I should say his first Super Speedway win with Hendrick. But Dale Jr. is a Daytona 500 winner as well. He won in 2004, the year after his fellow DEI, or Dale Earnhardt Incorporated teammate, Michael Waltrip, took home his second and final Daytona 500 victory in 03. But, you know, Dale Earnhardt Jr., he was running the 8 car for so long, and the 88 car and the number and everything was new to Hendrick, because they had never used the number 88 in the team's history, at least for the Cup division. That had never happened before, until Dale Earnhardt Jr. came along, and Hendrick was like, what number do you want to run? It doesn't seem right to run the 25 or the 5, because that just wasn't how Dale Jr. was really encompassed to run with Hendrick Motorsports. That wasn't what he was into. He didn't like any of the numbers, and Rick Hendrick essentially said, okay, well, you are Dale Earnhardt Jr. You're the son of the Intimidator, one of the most illustrious and accomplished racers of all time, especially in NASCAR. Do you just want to choose your own number and we can go from there? And he said sure, and then he chose the 88 because he drove the number 8 for DEI, and then they added an extra 8 to it. And there were some controversies legally in the courts between Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and the team owner, Teresa Earnhardt, who is the former wife and now a widow of Dale Earnhardt Sr., as we said, who tragically passed away in the final lap accident at the 2001 Daytona 500, along with Ken Schrader and others. But with DEI, there were some legal troubles because they didn't want that number 8 car to be used in a professional setting, or like in a video game with licensing. It was mostly licensing issues that had sparked everything, but now Kevin Harvick is going to pit lane. This could possibly mean that green flag pit stops look like they're underway. Pit road speed is 60 miles an hour for those at home. Let's take a look at his pit stop. See what he's got going on. He's got the last stall since he started up front today. Let's see what he's got going. Looks like they're going to take 4 tires only. Nobody from this pack is pitting, but let's see what the leaders do, since really the only thing that has changed hands is the 2nd place and 3rd place position. Everything else has quite literally been more of the same. Oh, we got more of the leaders coming in. Ryan Newman, Matt Kenseth, Kyle Busch, and Dale Jr. are all coming in the pit. So now there's only about 5 cars left on the track that have not pitted yet. That is Denny Hamlin, Greg Biffle, with Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin. They're the only ones that have not pitted. And now Kevin Harvick is coming out into the track, while everybody else is sort of rushing in behind him. Let's see if he can get back up to speed. There's all those 4 drivers on pit lane: Newman, Earnhardt, Busch, and Kenseth. Looks like Newman will beat out Kenseth by a... Oh, that was really close. That was really close right there. Extremely close. Coming off of 4, let's see who does what. Do they all pit? Mark Martin does, but these 4 still are adamant about staying out. Derek Cope has made his way into the top 10, by the way. He's running 32 seconds behind the leader, but he's still in 10th, so at the end of the day, that still counts. There's Hamlin, Johnson, Gordon, and Biffle, Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, and Roush. The only cars that are still out after all this time. There's Kenseth, there's Newman, Earnhardt, Harvick, and Kyle Busch. There's the rest of the pet. They still have stayed out. They're still out. There's Mike Skinner. Where's Mike Skinner? Is he in turn... Yeah, he's in turn 2. That's weird. There's Mark Martin coming out onto the track. Does everybody else pit? Greg Biffle does. So there's 1 more down, 3 to go. There's Hamlin, Gordon, and Johnson. You'd have to think they would have to run out of fuel at some point, because what in the world is going on that is essentially like, oh, we have to, you know, keep on going, because it just doesn't make sense to me. And I saw their speed go down from like 192 to 186, but I knew that for all intents and purposes, they didn't run out of gas because they're just running in the corner. They're not doing anything that's an aberration of the normal. So let's see if they continue this pace up and see if one of them goes. None of them go. If you want to talk about late pitting, there you go. Johnson, Gordon, and Hamlin, who are in the lead right now, they have not pitted yet. I just find that absolutely astonishing, because everybody else has. There's Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Dale Jr., there's Mark Martin, Newman and Kenseth, Greg Biffle, and there's everybody else. I think Mike Skinner had pitted. Even Mike Skinner, all of that. Even Mike Skinner still pitted. But Johnson, Gordon, and Hamlin are very determined to make their fuel last as long as physically possible. And they're still staying out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the replay. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if they have pitted, or if I missed something, or if they just haven't pitted yet. So we're going to move this up to the fastest possible speed, which is 16x. See, he's moving up the field there. In second, there's Harvick pitting. No, they just haven't pitted yet. They have not pitted yet, so they are really stretching out the fuel as long as they physically can. So now, Newman, Johnson, and Gordon, they are literally just a few seconds behind everyone else. Look at the scoreboard here. They're all within a half second of each other, and now 2 of them are gone. Hamlin and Gordon. But, like, look at this. Everybody else, besides Gordon and Johnson and 2 Hendrick cars, are 36 and 42 seconds back. So I guess Jimmy Johnson is now the leader just by default with 12 laps to go at the Budweiser Shootout. And just, wow, that is honestly astonishing to me. The fact that they were able to pull that off. I mean, let's take a look from the hood, and you can see, you can barely see in the faint distance. There is everybody else, and Jimmy Johnson is a loner. He is a loner. And is Johnson out of gas? He's running at 100. How is he staying out? This is going to backfire big time. I'm telling all of you right now. This is going to backfire. I think that he's going to run out of gas or something, and he might lose the lead, and he might bring out a caution with 11 to go. It's just really, really weird to me. And it's not normal in any way. It's not normal in any sense of the word. I mean, it's so quiet with just Johnson running. And there's Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon has decided to readjust back onto the track and hold up everybody in the meantime. With that being said, here comes Johnson off of 4. And it has finally happened. About 9 laps, I'd say 7 to 9 laps after everybody else pitted, Jimmy Johnson is finally going to break his streak and come in and pit. Now the question is, here's the question. Here's that big pack with Matt Kenseth, and there's Ryan Newman and Dale Jr. and everybody else. The real question is, if here comes Jimmy Johnson off of pit lane, he might be able to keep his lead. But keep an eye on this pack, because they might catch up to Jimmy. I mean, there he is coming off to the tri-oval. Ryan Newman again out in front. We're coming to 9 to go. At least should be. Where's Johnson? There's John. Oh, Johnson's running way slower. And Mike Skinner got in the way of the leader, so now Ryan Newman is back at it. Here comes Johnson. Let's take a look. You know, I might have to eat my words here, because it looks like Johnson might have just timed that pit stop so perfectly that that's how he ends up winning the race. He's back up to speed, and he's in front of everybody. Alright, maybe he's not back up to speed yet, but he is darn close. And actually, there's Denny Hamlin. I didn't even realize that Denny Hamlin is the race leader because he was so far out there. Like, here's the big pack behind him, rushing with 9 to go. And now they're all the ones that are going crazy. With that being said, it's time to crank it up on Fox. But that pack is really catching up. It is really, really catching up. And I apologize there, as we had some technical issues for the last 2 laps, so you could hear the race just fine, but I was trying to talk and just wouldn't go. But I digress. With 5 laps to go this time by, what I was going to say is that the pack, who was over 4 seconds back when the pit cycles had concluded, are now back to where they exactly were. They're all competitive again. Because here comes Dale Jr. on the inside. He's going to try to work with Jimmy Johnson. Reminds me of that commercial from a few years ago. I'm Jimmy Johnson. Boom, confetti. Now it's Hamlin and Johnson working with Earnhardt and Biffle, as they look to be making some moves here. Johnson now out of second place. Here comes Junior off of the corner. He's going to try to make a run. 4 laps to go coming this time by. Is he able to block Biffle in that inside line? It looks like he does. Now Biffle and Busch making a bit of an alliance on that inside line. And there's Ryan Newman all the way back in 7th, who had ran so well. He had led the majority of laps and is now relegated to the rear of the competitive field, almost there. Hamlin starting to extend his cushion a little bit, but they're 3 wide right behind him. So if any one of them ends up forming a big pack and an alliance, they could easily take down Hamlin. Although Kyle Busch now is in second as we come back to the stripe again. So that raises another question. Would Kyle Busch even want to take a lead away from Hamlin? Because he would have to elect to do so. You know, it's just sort of like, okay, you know, if you want to help out a teammate, then why try to push yours out of the way? Because Joe Gibbs, their whole thing is working with your teammates. And a lot of teams have the same motto. So it's not like Kyle Busch is really going to be destined to put Denny Hamlin out of the way and put himself in victory lane. Because Kyle Busch, he can be an aggressive driver. I will openly admit that. He can be aggressive. But if he's going to work with his teammate, then at the end of the day, it might be a better solution. Denny Hamlin coming back to the stripe. 2 more laps to go, just 5 more miles of racing from Daytona International. From the eastern seaboard of Florida, from Daytona Beach, just a few minutes away from the Floridian beaches and tropical weather that they experience here basically every single day. It reminds me, I was in Florida a few years ago in December. It was still 88 degrees. It's what I love about the state, but also this track as well. One of the best in the country. One of the best in the world, I'd say. But enough bibbling and babbling about racetracks. Denny Hamlin will take the white flag. 1 more lap to go. Matt Kenseth right behind him in second. He's going to encounter some lap traffic. There's Bobby Labonte and Elliott Sadler. This might help Biffle. But now Derek Cope might be the man standing in between a win. Oh, look at Greg Biffle. He's coming in on the inside there. He might hold up Hamlin. Although he's coming into the inside, he might hold up Biffle too. He might hold up both of them. What in the world are we going to see here down the backstretch one final time at the Budweiser Shootout here in 09? He's going to hold up Biffle. Oh boy, here comes Kyle Busch on the inside. They're 3 wide going into the corner. And Derek Cope being shoved out of the way. Kyle Busch to the lead. Ryan Newman on his inside. It'll be a drag race back to the line. It's going to be really close. 3 wide. And Kyle Busch wins it by 0.02 of a second at the 2009 Budweiser Shootout in that pedigree Camry. Kyle Busch picks up his first career win at a plate track in the Cup circuit. And he won that, as we had said, by just about 25 1/1000ths of a second, or 2 100ths of a second. Your final finishing order out of these 20 cars: Kyle Busch, Ryan Newman, Jimmy Johnson, Greg Biffle, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. in your top 5. Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin, Denny Hamlin, who had led. Denny Hamlin was leading on the last lap and fell from 1st to 8th. Kevin Harvick and Matt Kenseth rounding out your top 10. There's Kyle Busch going for a bit of an extra victory lap. Who can blame him? And then finishing 1 lap down will be Derek Cope, Elliott Sadler, Bobby Labonte, Tony Stewart, and Mike Skinner. Retired from this race without taking the checkered flag. They had to go early. They had to go home early. Jamie McMurray, Joe Nemechek, Terry Labonte, Bill Elliott, and Michael Waltrip. This wraps it up from the 2009 Budweiser Shootout. This is Dan Wilkins signing off for now. We'll see you guys on the Daytona Backstretch Short Track for the next edition of the 2009 Sprint Cup Series on Fox for the Gatorade Duels. That'll determine the qualifying order and who makes it and who goes home at the Daytona 500.